from Minneapolis. Now we move on to India. India has responded to US President Donald Trump's comments regarding Pakistan's nuclear activities, with the External Affairs Ministry highlighting Pakistan's history of clandestine nuclear operations. Spokesperson Ranveer Jaiswal has emphasized that Pakistan's nuclear activities have long been marked by smuggling, export control violations, and covert partnerships. India has consistently raised concerns about these practices on the global stage. Jaiswal has noted that Trump's recent remarks, which included Pakistan in a list of countries testing nuclear weapons, align with India's position on Pakistan's nuclear history. Now we move on. The Indian Supreme Court has given a clean chit to Air India pilot Sumeet Sabharwal, stating he should not be held responsible for the tragic AI-171 crash. The court, on an emotive note, has also advised his 91-year-old father not to carry the burden of blame and reassured him that nobody can hold his son accountable. Meanwhile, notices have been issued to the Centre and the Director General of Civil Aviation seeking their replies on a petition requesting an independent probe into the incident. As per the preliminary report by the AAIB, the pilot was not at fault and that only a brief exchange took place between the two pilots regarding fuel. Responses from the Centre and DGCA are now awaited on the request for a full independent investigation. The Air India flight AI-171 took off from Ahmedabad on June 12 earlier this year and was headed for London's Gatwick airport, but it crashed seconds later near a medical college, claiming 260 people's lives in a tragic incident. Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. M.J. Augustine Vinod. He's a Group of Captain fighter pilot, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now looking at this, how should accountability be balanced between individual pilots and systematic aviation authorities in major air disasters like the one that we saw this year with Air India?
I can comment on how a pilot is, to be held responsible or not held responsible in a broader sense and not specific to this particular accident. See, a couple of days ago, we saw another crash in Louisville, Kentucky. Before that, another crash where immediately after takeoff, the aeroplane just turned around and crashed into the ground, and many such crashes. In the Air Force, I've done many crash investigations in which, including some fatal crashes. So, in short of the whole summary of when a pilot is not there to defend himself is that we don't ever blame a pilot and attribute a particular crash to a pilot error. For simple reason, you will have multiple cheese holes aligning. It's called the Swiss cheese model. Multiple cheese holes aligning before anything goes into the ground. So there are systemic failures, operational failures, maintenance issues, and weather. So many such factors have to come together for an aeroplane to go into the ground. So that being said, there are certain times when some of the cheese holes are pre-aligned. In many cases, those pre-aligned cheese holes, to put it very simply, there could be an inherent systemic issue that is already prevailing, which has not been identified. So any safety organization, whether it's an aviation safety organization or on a shop floor safety organization or any safety organization, they are there to identify an issue or a problem which pre-exists, a pre-existing condition, and address those issues so that the pre-existing condition does not eventually leads to multiple things coming together and aeroplane going into the ground. Third and the most important thing in in my previous avatar in as a new pilot of a single pilot cockpit vis-a-vis a large aeroplane is a lot of lives depend on you. So the safety conditions, safety stringency, safety parameters, all those are 10 or 100 times more strict, more procedure oriented, more process oriented in a civilian flight rather than in a military flight. So military flight is a very dynamic kind of flying and dynamic kind of maneuver. In civilian flight, you fly from A to B in a straight line or in a predetermined route, and you don't deviate from that route unless there is some weather for which you take permission to deviate. And if you can't, suppose you're an oceanic route, then you deviate using given a certain procedure. So those are the things that binds pilots to fly a certain pattern. So all this said, which is why probably the courts have come down and said you cannot hold pilot responsible because it is not, it is never a single cause that causes any accident. Like this DC-10 or the Kentucky accident in Louisville, the engine just came off. But the engine coming off is not the event. Event is something else. Maybe the engine was not fitted correctly, or there was a fatigue failure, or whatever. So those are the things that needs to be looked at by the safety organization. So that is why probably the courts have said you cannot hold the pilot responsible because it is never a singular cause. There are multiple causes that leads to a particular accident. Over to you.
Yes, and Dr. MJ, building on your answer, you mentioned there are so many things to be addressed still. Can you share some of the things that are still left to be addressed on this particular case? And what are the implications of the Indian Supreme Court's exoneration for public trust in Indian aviation safety and regulatory standards in India?
Very good question. In fact, statistics and mathematics proves that the safety standards and the procedural standards and the rate of accident in India is one of the lowest in the world. I mean, it might, for viewers, it might not sound, plausible, but that is a fact. It is extremely safe. I don't remember, the previous crash was some 3-4 years ago on a tabletop runway owing to bad weather, wet runway, and from bad braking action. So in India, accidents are extremely rare. And we fly a lot because India, we have many small hubs connecting from A to B and many international bases and stations we go to. Therefore, and we have mixed flying, as in helicopters fly. We are not a large country like China or US, but we are an extremely populous country in this small little area. So the density of population is high, and therefore movement of population within short ranges are much, much higher. So we have helicopter traffic, we have military traffic, we have civilian traffic, and all of them coexist. Therefore, there is an extremely stringent requirement for safety standards to be followed, which is followed in India to the T. So you will, I don't remember having heard a scene, post 80s, maybe early 80s, we have had a mid-air collision. Whereas last year, end of last year, you remember there was a mid-air collision in DC when an military helicopter collided with a civilian aeroplane and so many people perished. So such harakiri doesn't happen in India because of stringent, strong procedures that is in place. Yes, I agree. Aviation booming, and it is booming at a very, very high pace. And rest of the services needs to catch up, needs to stay abreast, and needs to modernize. In fact, right in the morning, I wrote an article on it, how we need to modernize as a world, as this blue planet, how we need to modernize in what all aspects. It's in Eurasian Times, people can go and read it there. I've covered all the technical aspects as to how we need to modernize to stay abreast and to stay safe. Safer skies and safer landings will lead to safer travels and more people willing to travel.
Right. I will also look into that article you've mentioned and you've written. Thank you very much, Dr. M.J. Augustine Vinod, for joining us and sharing that insight as a retired group captain fighter pilot from New Delhi. Now we stay in India. Hundreds of flights have been delayed at Delhi Airport, one of the world's busiest, after an air traffic control messaging system suffered a technical problem, as per reports. The glitch, which delayed departures by an average of an hour, could cascade and lead to log jams at other airports in the country as well. The flight radar 24 data showed arrival delays were also inching upwards due to congestion on the ground. Shares of Indigo closed 2% lower, while SpiceJet lost 1%, along with Air India Group warned of delays. The carriers face the prospect of higher costs from passenger care expenses and refunds due to the delays, which are expected to spill over to Saturday.